Let's get right into it. What is it? So the add-ons are a per tenant unit. So that's really important to kind of get very clear from the get-go is you are going to enable an add-on on a per tenant. In LimaCharlie, we call those tenants orgs. So you're going to be taking an add-on that you have access to, either it's public or it's your own, and you're going to enable it, so subscribe one of your orgs to that add-on, and that's going to give you access to it. In most cases, it'll just give you access to it, but you'll see that there's some cases where that's all you have to do. You just need to subscribe to it, and behind the scenes, it sets up a whole bunch of automation for you. So let's get into, one thing I forgot to mention. It might slip sometimes. We might refer to it a little bit as resources. We talk about add-ons in some cases. We're talking about resources, a little bit of the wording there. Where can we find them? So to do that, what I will be doing is we will just switch to the actual thing. So stop sharing and let's go back into actual LimaCharlie. All right. So here's the big refactor that we've done. So add-ons are now available globally in the add-on section here in the top right. So that's going to give you the global view for all of the add-ons, not necessarily centered around a specific org, but really globally. If you then want to go and dig deeper into, what is exactly affecting a specific org, or you want to register a specific org to something, you will be able to do it from here, to subscribe and see what is subscribed. But you will also get a more tactical view of these add-ons if you go into your organization, here as an example, and you go into the add-on section of that organization. You will see exactly what you're currently subscribed to. So you can, go check it out, see all of the information. And you can even search for new add-ons that you might want to ask right from the search box here. So this is really how we structure the views. However, it's worth noting that there's also another big kind of lens here, which is the infrastructure as code. It's really good to keep in mind that all the things, including those add-ons, are available through infrastructure as code. So if you're going to be building multiple tenants, if you're an MSSP or doing incident response, we have a couple of webinars and YouTube videos and edu.limacharlie.io that talks about it. You definitely want to check that out. This is the kind of thing that's going to, give you the superpower of cloning your tenants and deploying at scale really, really easily, right? No more 50,000 clicks through every new tenant. So let's get into the structure a little bit. So you will see that we've got a couple of sections here of interest. So, featured is kind of a little bit self-explanatory. You'll see that we have APIs, services, and lookups. So each of those is a different type of add-on. So the APIs will be add-ons that integrate very deeply into LimaCharlie for various reasons. Usually it's kind of around performance, around really core, capability. Those are represented as APIs. So to give you an example, right, we have, for example, Insight that provides you data retention, which is technically optional. But we also have things like Net that will, if you subscribe to Net, that will open up entirely new sections of the UI around Net, which is our SASE, secure access service edge offering. But you also have things like VirusTotal. So VirusTotal is available as an API because we've deeply integrated it into our detection and response rules to allow you to do VT queries very, very quickly directly from within the rules. So if you click in one, you'll see, we have a good description of what it is. In a lot of cases, especially the add-ons that we provide, and you'll see how you can provide your own later on, will also include something around usage now. So if a specific add-on requires you to make use of it, it doesn't do kind of all the things automatically, we'll give you a little bit of a hit. So in this case, what you're seeing is we're giving you an example of using the VirusTotal API as part of the DNR rule, so a detection and response rule. If you're not aware, DNR rules is our rules engine. It's across all the things in LimaCharlie, right? From the EDR to the artifact processing to also lifecycle things you can automate from DNR rules, and it operates in real time. So that's a pretty important thing. In this case, you can see, from the description that, for VirusTotal specifically, you have to go into that organization, into the configuration of integration for that organization, set your API key. So you set your own API key. We do a bunch of caching in between and allow you to automate cases like here, looking up all the hashes, deduplicated hashes against VirusTotal, and triggering maybe a detection or an automation depending on the number of results. So those are APIs. Then we have services. So services are kind of like a step down. They're still very deep integrations. However, they are not quite as deep as the APIs. And really the critical factor here is that we allow you to create your own services. That is how we build the bulk of our new capabilities. And we have an open source kind of reference implementation in Python and in Go. And it's a very basic protocol over webhooks, and it allows you to kind of get immediate integration into the lifecycle of all the things in LimaCharlie. So you can see that it really covers, the whole spectrum, right? We go from things like, cutting edge to Sigma and Soteria rules. What those three have in common is that they're essentially rule packs. So when you subscribe to them, there's nothing else that you need to do. The service will install all of its rules into your organization. It'll do that in a different namespace, so you won't see the rule itself, which allows you, by the way, if you're interested in monetizing your own rule packs. But we will apply the rules to each organization that subscribes, and they will just get the detections coming from the rules. So that's the type of very basic integration. However, we have different ones that are a bit more involved or that work in very different ways, right? So we have the LC-net install service that will allow you to, at the moment on the Windows box, upgrade in LimaCharlie EDR transparently in a couple of seconds to LimaCharlie Net, which is our SASE offering. So behind the scene, this service will stage, the installer for WireGuard, which we use, underneath LimaCharlie Net. It'll stage all of this in your organization as payload. So kind of configure all the things. Those are ultimately all things that you could do, and you could do through our SDK, but it'll just automate and orchestrate all of it. We also have some of them that are still pretty core, right? Like exfil or integrity, that will open up sections of the web UI, but that don't require quite the same level of integration. So it's simpler for us to provide those as very basic services. We also have, the last kind of big category is PagerDuty. And we have a couple like this. So PagerDuty, which is going to not do anything in and of its own, but it's going to expose a request API through LimaCharlie so that you can task that service either manually directly by yourself or as part of detection and response rules. We'll show you can create a specific request for a service. So that's how you can automate a lot of the types of pipelines that you're interested in. Finally, the easiest of all of those categories are lookups. Lookups are really exactly what they say, which is they are a lookup list. So it's going to be a list of something with metadata associated to it. So, paraphrasing, usually what this translates into is it's a threat feed. That's the biggest use case people use it for. But there's other ways that I'll touch on. But here's an example, Alien Vault IP Reputation, which is a list that they publish publicly. So by enabling this add-on, really you're just opening up, subscribing your tenant to it, which gives you access to it. It, as all lookups, will not do anything of it, of its own. You have to kind of interact, like leverage them. Usually, again, if they're threat feeds, the biggest way to do that is through a detection and response. So here in this case, we give you an example. Here's how you can take all network connections and query all of the IPs against this list. If you're familiar with the DNR rule engine, you'll know, and I'll point out later how, really you can look up anything in any of the events. You're not limited to just, here's the 4 things you can look up against a watch list that runs every 5 minutes. This is all 100% wire speed, real time, and you can run it against any part of it. So any part of the events that come through. So that might be the network connection of the endpoints, but it could also be the host name of the endpoints. So you can create lists of host names. You could use external IP address or tags. There's a ton of different things that you could leverage in these events. And if you can represent it as a list, like a dictionary in Python or YAML of key and values, then you can leverage it as a lookup. So that is kind of the big use case that I'll show you a little bit later, how you can create those. You can see that there's a bunch of different lookups, created by a bunch of different people around, various intrusion sets. There's some that are a little bit less obvious. That's kind of my favorite one here, the Tor IPs. So there is a website where they publish lists of Tor IPs. That's really interesting because it's not in and of itself, really a threat feed, but it means that you could use that as part of the rest of your ecosystem of, detection, response, automation, and use that knowledge. Maybe an endpoint is connecting through Tor, or an endpoint is connecting to something via a Tor exit node. Those might be interesting pieces of metadata. Maybe you don't want to create a detection on that. Maybe you want to just tag an endpoint for one day when that happens and say, this endpoint talked to Tor. Just because that's just a little piece of metadata as you're doing maybe incident response that you want to be able to kind of visualize very quickly. Hey, I'm looking at the sensor, something happened. It's got the Tor tag. I don't have to go and go through, list of detections for the past month. I know that for example, the last 24 hours, this talked to a Tor node. This is interesting.